Can we control the weather? Yes, we can. It's a fact. We did it. The Americans did it in Vietnam. Humans can do this. It's a fact. Do humans go to wars for stupid things like oil and religion and expansion of power and expansion of central economic banking systems? It would appear that we do, those humans. And I say we loosely, but we are all humans. So some of us are doing it. We are doing it. And then you need to ask the question, would then, if technology is available to control the weather, would persons do that to their economic benefit or to their global elitist benefit, if they had a plan for the planet, etc., etc.? Would persons do that? If they could control economies, control populations, control harvests, control yields of crops, might there be a chance that someone would, or some persons would take advantage of that and do that if they could?
You're spraying your chemical to increase your decimal, to continue domination, keep all them people down. You're spraying your chemical to increase your decimal, to continue domination, keep all them people down. Come on, mama, give me what you got. Come on, mama, give me what you got.
Hey guys, so just want to do a little video about a subject many deem as boring, because it is boring most of the time for many people, and that is the weather. So please, if you're into the weather, don't start defending it. I'm just saying it because in the West it tends to be the thing people talk about when they have nothing else to talk about, or at least in England. So the weather, which is actually an interesting subject, but that's what I want to talk about. We are having some major problems here with the weather. Now, according to Met Officers, the problem that we're facing is El Nino. And what's happened is, first of all, we had rain, so everyone planted their fields. Then after we planted the fields, the rain went away and didn't stay like it was supposed to. And it got intensely hot. It got so hot that everything that was planted started to grow and then died. Then we replanted. Everybody, we were included in this. We replanted and the rains came, but the rains didn't stop. And we had severe flooding, and we've had very bad rainfall over the last few weeks. Even so much so that 2 people just up here died in a flood last week. And the river, there's a bridge in Uchira which goes over the river, and the gap between the bottom of the bridge and the river is normally around about 5 meters. And the river came over the top of the bridge, bringing with it lots of mud and trees, and blocked off the main road. Because the road that runs through the middle of Uchira is the road that connects the whole country. There's only one main road here. So it washed out the fields, it destroyed various areas, it completely changed the landscape in others. Even down the side of the land where we are now, one day I heard a roaring noise and I ran over to see what it was, and there was nothing there. And then a little wall of water, about 3 foot wide and 2 foot tall, came rumbling down the side of our land and passed us by and down onto the main road here. So it's been unbelievable, the amount of rainfall they're getting, and the locals have not seen it like this in ever, is how a lot of them are putting it, but I'm presuming a very long time. So why do I want to talk about it? Well, first and foremost, I want to alert people to what is going on with Africa at the moment, certainly where I am. There's drought in other areas due to El Nino. What is being called El Nino, I'm going to get onto that. In areas where they're getting a lot of rain, it's getting too much rain. In other areas, the weather is so sporadic due to changes in the climate, changes in the weather patterns, that people can't get their crops to grow. And even if they harvest them, they can't store them due to the level of moisture, and then all of a sudden the dramatic intense sunshine that we're facing. So there's lots of interesting stuff on the planet about climate change, and there's no doubt about it in my mind that, of course, something is changing. The climate is changing. The cause of that, I think, is numerous things coupled into one. I don't think it's a single thing. I do believe that we as humans, have caused a lot of the devastation to the planet that we are. Because when you're drinking resources from the planet's ground, such as oil, burning them and pumping them back into the atmosphere, the rate by which you burn them, they can't be replaced. And we know the planet is one working, beautiful ecosystem. And it's only a matter of time before you take too much, which is what we're seeing at the moment. But there are other things out there. There are a lot of tribal elders and stuff saying the sky's changed. They believe the sky's changed and that the axis of the planet has shifted a little bit, so it's spinning in a different way. Interesting stuff, but I never believe anything like that until I see it with my own eyes. If I was to study the night sky and the rising of the sun over a prolonged period of time, or if I had ancestors who had been doing it and then all of a sudden it shifted, I'd believe it. But until I've done it myself, I never take the words of other human beings for it, because that's not a way I found I can rely on in life, because a lot of the time that which people take the word of, stuff like the government and the mainstream news, turns out to be bogus and nonsense. So I'm always careful. Things I accept as an absolute truth are my own experience. That which I experience, I know is the only singular truth that I can experience. So what is altering the weather and what is changing it? Well, they say it's global warming, greenhouse gases. And the science kind of adds up with regards to that, for sure. But there are other problems that we have in the equation that are not being spoken about or answered for by the authorities. And I want to know what on earth is going on with them. Why won't they answer it? Now, many of you will have heard the term chemtrails. And many of you will Google it. And the first thing that comes up is a Wikipedia entry of chemtrails theory or conspiracy theory and stuff like this, something along these lines. The word conspiracy is always in there. But as I often say, the only conspiracy is the way that the internet and the media have portrayed the word conspiracy now within the human intellect. So as soon as someone hears it, they think about wackos and nut jobs who are saying there's a conspiracy, when in truth we need to accept that word has meaning in our language, and you should remain alert when you hear it, and you should look into things and say, is there something going on? So chemtrails. Now, there was lots of evidence out there, but as I've said earlier, that which I witness is that which I believe. Now, I spent, before I came here, a lot of time in nature by myself, and I was always someone who looked up at the sky. I was always that child as well that looked up at the sky, and I did notice a change, and many of you are noticing that change. And that change I noticed is that all of a sudden planes were leaving trails in the sky that spread out and formed into clouds. To me, it's a fact that that's happening, because I watched it not used to be like that to becoming like that. Now, lots of people say it's a contrail vapour and it's always happened, but there is physics behind it, and I'm another person who believes in mathematics and science, and I hold that in high reverence. And I think once we couple spirituality with science, as many of you know from my other videos, then we start finding the true answers of the mysteries out there. But there is science behind it, and the idea that a contrail can turn into a cloud over the top of somewhere like the UK constantly, even no matter what the weather, doesn't fall right, because it has to be a certain temperature for that to keep happening. And when you can see certain planes flying similar altitudes to the others and theirs are not doing anything like the huge clouds they were creating, I began to say to myself, something's different here. The sky has changed for me when I was in the UK. It did change. And the more I looked up, the more I began to see what was going on. Now, it's not a conspiracy anymore, this idea of chemtrailing. If anyone wants to start refuting it and stuff like this, there are many governing agencies around the planet have admitted the concept of spraying aluminium particles and barium into the sky of the Earth to deflect the heat of the sun's rays. And in doing so, they can hopefully slow down or reduce the effects of global warming and reduce the difficult weather patterns that we're facing. That is one explanation, and maybe that is the truth. Maybe that's what they're doing. But why aren't they being transparent? Why aren't they saying this is what we're doing in clear in the public eye? So this altered weather patterns, it's an unusual thing. And I've already seen that they are geoengineering. And geoengineering is not new to the planet. If we look back at the Vietnamese War, it's documented that they washed out roads by changing the weather by spraying into the sky. Using planes to spray to alter the weather patterns, to dump rain on certain roads to wash them out, so the supply routes were taken away from the Vietnamese army. This is something we did. This is a fact. This is something the Americans did. As humans, we can do that. We did this. And it's not an uncommon thing. You know, this is something that can happen, and if you're wealthy enough, you can alter the weather above your child's birthday party, which I've heard about people doing when they're spraying and stuff like this. Cloud seeding, as you call it. So, the reason I wanted to talk about chemtrails, as I say, is there's a lot of stuff standing about against it. A lot of people think it's nonsense and mumbo jumbo. But the sky did change whilst I was looking at it in England. And for many people, the sky has changed. But for many of you, you don't look at the sky because to varying degrees, some of us are so caught up in the system we don't get a chance to. We are so locked into the system, providing for those we love and driven by the love for those that we love, to provide for them, to earn for them. We don't look at our natural surroundings anymore. But to be an effective human being, to be an effective anything, business person, mother, father, brother, sister, anything, you have to be conscious of your present moment and your surroundings and your environment. And as I say, I saw the skies change. So I know they were doing something. Now, as you look around, there are plenty of persons out there. There's a huge conference on YouTube you can watch, which was doctors, scientists, pilots, meteorologists, the list goes on, who were appealing to the government to tell them what was going on with the chemtrailing and why they were doing it. Because these people were providing such an unbelievable amount of evidence that it couldn't be denied that that's what was going on in that area. Now, I'm not saying it's sinister, it might have good roots in it, but when the planet's weather is changing so dramatically, and when it's common knowledge to all those unfortunate persons with a mind for war, there are people who have said this, when man controls the weather, he can win every war without any problem, because you can starve people out, you can destroy everything by playing God on that level. It's not uncommon for men to play God. People play God in your house every day by controlling the light that goes into you, by controlling the TV broadcast that goes into you. God is the light that meets you from out there, out in the universe, and when it comes through a TV, someone's playing God with you. Same with the weather. If someone's learned how to control the weather, which is another question altogether, they can play God. But when the weather is so bizarre as it is now, and so many places are suffering and struggling, and so many global weather events can change so much regarding global policy, and when you follow what's happening with regards to the economic system after global events happen and so on and so forth, Japan's a very interesting area if you want to look at somewhere regarding changes in the economic systems and changes in the governing of the country and how its central banks are controlled, so on and so forth, and how those changes shifted with coincidence with natural disasters. So natural disasters do have a huge effect on the economy and how countries are governed, depending what happens to them. You have to start asking questions. And me as a person here who's watching families who are suffering desperately because the weather's so bizarre, it's washing out their food constantly. And yeah, they're saying it's El Nino, and El Nino makes sense to me. The physics is there, the science is there, it makes sense. But what's causing it is my question. Is it the global warming? Is it just human beings? Is there a shift in the planet? For me, the science adds up that humans are causing most of the devastation by not living in the correct way on the planet. They care more about this illusion they've created rather than the reality of the truth of the present moment. As in money is what I'm referring to, rather than caring about nature and the only home they're ever going to have, no matter how much money they have. So What is going on with the weather? Why have we got chemtrails? Why is the weather so bizarre? Why am I standing in the middle of a place where people are so impoverished and the weather has changed so much and become so unpredictable that those tribespeople who could once rely on the rains coming at set times is just completely gone? What is going on? Is humanity secretly trying to fight this to stop it from happening? Are parts of humanity secretly trying to control this to their own advantage, and in trying to play God are causing problems all over the planet without knowing they are? I don't know. But all I do know is if you do some research on chemtrailing and you do some research on High Active Auroral Research Project, or HARP, then something doesn't quite add up. Something's not as it seems here. And if you look, and if you live in a place where there's a developing country like this, you see the massive effect the weather has on people. Then yeah, something doesn't add up. Something's not right. It really isn't. And whilst you're researching those things, if you have a base understanding of numerology and the occultish, the occult numerology, the occult numerological beliefs of certain very powerful societies on the planet, who might very well be in control of such programs as chemtrailing, and you coincide that with various weather events in years such as 2011, and you start looking at the dates and the master numbers of numerology, there are some really freaky coincidences. And as I often say, I don't believe in coincidences no more. So, what is going on the planet? Well, at the very least, you have to ask that question, is what is happening with the weather? And at the very least, you need to ask as well, is there a possibility that technology has gotten to the point where men and women can determine what's going to happen with the weather in certain parts of the planet? And yes, they can. In which case, you need to look at humans and say, morally, would us humans who go to war and stuff, questionable wars to gain dominion over different lands and start wars over religions and start wars over oil, and would some of us possibly control the weather if the technology was available to do so? And if you can ask those questions and you can just answer them very logically instead of arguing, oh, it can't be this, it can't be that, just say it like that. Can we control the weather? Yes, we can. It's a fact. We did it. The Americans did it in Vietnam. Humans can do this. It's a fact. Do humans go to wars for stupid things like oil and religion and expansion of power and expansion of central economic banking systems? It would appear that we do, as humans. And I say we loosely, but we are all humans. So some of us are doing it. We are doing it. And then you need to ask the question, would then, if technology is available to control the weather, would persons do that to their economic benefit or to their global elitist benefit, if they had a plan for the planet, etc., etc.? Would persons do that? If they could control economies, control populations, control harvests, control yields of crops, might there be a chance that someone would, or some persons would take advantage of that and do that if they could? And if the answer is yes, then you need to go and do some research, because I think all of you would answer yes, of course. And then we're going to all look to the world with correct eyes and never always blame it on Mother Nature, as I'm reluctant to do. Mother Nature's sometimes very cruel, weather's unpredictable. But at the moment, I've got a horrible feeling that humanity's put his finger inside Mother Nature, just as we have by felling the forests, etc. But I think we've put it in Mother Nature in the sky. It's just a suspicion I have within me that something's not right here. Something's not right. So tomorrow we shall be replanting our maize again. And for those families who can't afford to plant for a third time, we'll be helping them to replant theirs as well, so that people have something to eat this year, and this weather, in this area at least, hasn't affected people as badly as it could have. So, okay. Controversial views, I know, but something's not right. Something's not right. Okay, much love, guys. Bye.
You're spraying your chemical to increase your decimal, to continue domination, keep holding people down. You're spraying your chemical to increase your decimal, to continue domination, keep holding people down. Come on, mama, give me what you got.